Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So yesterday we started a session on Sanatan Dharma, the principles, the importance, the basis of Sanatan Dharma. And the very basis of Sanatan is the scriptures. And we talked about the Vedic knowledge which comes through the Shruti and Smriti scriptures, and how these two types of scriptures manifest themselves, Shruti as the Vedas, etc., and Smriti, the Puranas and the Itihasas mainly, which is what they constitute. And we talked about how Shruti is that which doesn't change, which has been heard, reviewed, and include the Vedas and Upanishads. And the Smriti is that which is remembered, and that can change with time and circumstances, and includes the Itihasas and the Puranas. And Bhagavad Gita, what is it? It's both. It's Shruti and Smriti. Shruti more because these are the words of Krishna which are eternal, which won't change. The truth will not change, which is what in the Bhagavad Gita. And we quickly described the four principal primary Vedas, the Rig Ved, which is songs of praise, mainly to the Devatas. And why does the Vedas mainly talk about sacrifice sacrifice to the demigods? Is because we are trapped in this material world and we want to satisfy our material desires. And in order to somewhat purify those material desires, the Vedas encourages the worship of devatas, demigods, so that we can understand that there are higher living entities than us who permit the the desires, our desires, to be fulfilled. So this is why this is regarded as a very important plank of Vedic philosophy. And Krishna actually dismisses the fruitive activities prescribed, or fruitive rituals prescribed within the Vedas, because they will only keep us in this material world. Although they do purify our material desires to some degree, it doesn't get rid of the material desires. So he discourages Arjuna from taking part in the fruitive rituals which are mentioned in the Vedas. And that means for us as well, we should avoid these ritualistic activities mentioned in the Vedas. Then there's the Yajurved, which is about the rituals which are described, how they are performed by the Brahmins. Samaved is the melodies. If the Vedas are not recited in a certain rag, certain melody, then they become ineffective, as is also described in Atharva Ved. So just to emphasize, the four Vedas mainly deal with material elevation. And since Lord Vishnu is the Lord of material liberation, most sacrifices were directed towards the demigods. The Vedas represent the accomplishment of highly developed religious system and encourage satisfaction of material desires through worship of the demigods. So this is the point. If we try to satisfy our material desires ourselves, we'll go way off track. And there will be no hope of coming out of this material world. Whereas what the Vedas does is it shows how one can satisfy one's material desires through ritualistic activities towards the demigods. And in that way, we're slowly making progress, purifying ourselves. But it's a very slow progress. They contain many directions for increasing of one's power and position, or for reaching the heavens in one's future. by properly performing particular sacrifice in worship to the devas. So let's move on to the some other aspects of Vedic literature. Some people ask why there seems to be so many gods within Vedic culture. So often we have that same delusion. There are many gods in Hinduism. Actually, the position is that there's one supreme being who has many agents or demigods who assist in managing the creation and the natural forces within. And that one supreme being can also expand himself. He can become many. We call them incarnations or avatars. Everybody would have heard of the 10 avatars, for example. When these demigods are properly approached with prayer or worship, they may help facilitate the person by granting certain wishes that may be within the jurisdiction of that demigod. So this is what the demigod is able to provide, give. The names of these demigods are considered offices or positions. Like the prime minister is a position. Many people can occupy that position, not at the same time, but over time, rather than the actual name of the demigods. For example, we may call the president of the country by his personal name, or simply Mr. President. It is the position itself that allows for him to have certain powers or areas of influence. So this is the point. These devatas are actually living entities like you and me. But because they occupy a certain position, they also have the powers of those positions, but only as long as they are in that position. As soon as they leave that position for whatever reason, they are simply living entities like you or me. Nobody special, if you like. In case of the devatas, it is only after accumulating much pious credit, good karma, that a living being can earn the position of being a particular demigod. Then a person may become Indra or Vayu or attain some other position to assume specific powers or to control various aspects of material energy. So the devas are very powerful. They control material energy. They assist the Lord in the administrative functions within the universe. Just like the cabinet of the government assists the prime minister to run the country, similarly, the devas who occupy administrative positions within the universe assist the Lord in running the universe. So, according to the Vedas, the devas are not imaginary nor mythological beings, but are agents of the supreme will to administer different aspects of universal affairs. Very important to understand this. If we don't understand this, we would then look at the devas as they are independent source of power from the Supreme Lord. They are not independent. They are dependent on the Supreme Lord. The next aspect of the Vedas which confuses people is the main subject of the Vedas is karma kanda. Why? Karma kanda basically means doing good activities to get fruitive results, i.e., doing good karma to get benefit from the karma. The karma kanda section is meant to supply the rituals for purifying our mind and actions in the pursuit of our desires. So we have material desires. To fulfill those, if we go through the Vedic rituals, then our mind and actions are somewhat purified. So they won't be completely entangled in this world. So it's meant to supply the rituals for purifying our mind and actions in pursuit of desire, and not merely to live with the intent to acquire all of material wants and necessities from the demigods. By having faith and steadiness in the performance of the ritual, one establishes purification in one's habits and thoughts, because we are remembering that there's a higher being than us who's providing these benefits. That's very important because that reduces the level of the ego. Otherwise, if we're thinking all the time that we are the source of our own enjoyment, then unfortunately, that has a very negative impact on our false ego. So this provides a gradual process of acquiring one's needs and working out one's desires while simultaneously becoming purified and free from them. But it takes time because we still have a desire to fulfill material desires. And unfortunately, whilst that desire is in our heart, we will not attain the spiritual realm. Such purification can then bring one to a higher level of spiritual activity. So it can take time, but we will get there eventually. This was the higher purpose of the karma kanda rituals. Without this understanding, one misses the point and remains attached to the rituals in pursuit of material desires, which will drag one further into material existence. So the idea is the Vedas wants us to get out of this material world in a gradual process. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. In this way, yes, Prabhupada?
Hare Krishna, everybody.
Hare Krishna.
You said rituals. What is rituals? Is it still karma?
Yes, it is. And the rituals are, for example, doing the havan.
Yeah.
In order to appease, say Satyanarayan Katha, for example, would be one, where the main recipient of that benefit of that yajna is Suryadev, right? Satyanarayan Katha. Or is it that's Narayan himself? But there are many...
the Rajavasis are doing the Indra Puja.
Indra Puja. So the idea is they would do these sacrifice to please a demigod, and the demigod would become pleased and give them rewards.
Like Ashirvad.
No, not yes, Ashirvad, but also material benefits. They would supply them whatever is needed. Like Indra would supply them rains for their crops, like that.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. In this way, it was recommended that people could perform sacrificial rituals to obtain their desires. However, by the performance of such acts, they should understand their dependent positions, not only on the demigods, but ultimately on the Supreme Being. Otherwise, we will be thinking, I am the source of my happiness. And that's not actually correct. The source of our position is that we are dependent on others, the devatas and the Supreme Lord especially. So the next point, do those interested in spiritual knowledge do karma kanda activities? So if one is really interested in becoming God conscious, do we still do karma kanda activity? Do we still try to satisfy the demigods through karma kanda activities? In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna points out that men of small intelligence who are given to worldly desires take delight in the flowery words of the Vedas that prescribe rituals for attaining power, riches, rebirth in heaven. So Krishna is not recommending it. No. Krishna is saying, no. You have small intelligence. If you get attached to the flowery words of the Vedas, with their goal of enjoyment, they say there is nothing else than this. However, Krishna goes on to explain in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 21 to 23, that when a person desires to worship a particular demigod, Deva, for the temporary and limited fruits he or she may bestow, then Krishna, as a super soul in everyone's heart, makes that person's faith in that demigod steady. But all the benefits given by any demigod actually are given by Krishna alone, or the Supreme Lord alone. For without whom no one has any power. The worshippers of the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but the worshippers of Krishna reach Krishna's spiritual abode. So this is the point. If we want to worship the devatas, we will, the furthest we will ever go is to the planet of the devatas, which is still in this world. But what Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is those who worship him will reach his planet, which is beyond this world, is in the spiritual world. For one who has begun to endeavor for reaching the supreme goal of Vedic knowledge, the prescribed duties in the Vedas for worshipping the demigods are unnecessary. As Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 17 and 18 explains, for one who is fully self-realized, there is no duty or need to perform the prescribed duties found in the Vedas, because he has no purpose or material desire to fulfill. So this is the point. As long as we have material desires, we are trapped in this world. So the idea is to consciously reduce our material desires, and increase our spiritual desires. How to do that? We want to know more about the Supreme Lord. We want to engage in the seva of the Supreme Lord. We want to engage in the seva of the devotees of the Supreme Lord. When we increase those desires, then our material desires will automatically reduce. Material desires, new car, new house, new friends, etc. More enjoyment in this world. If we have that mood, then we will stay in this world, because those desires need to be fulfilled before we can move to the spiritual realm. So what we try to do is reduce those material desires by increasing spiritual desires. So a little bit more about the Vedic literatures. Although the four principal Vedas include the concept of spiritual perfection, it is not so thoroughly presented. So the Vedas does include how to become fully spiritually conscious, but it's a little bit hidden. It's not very obvious. Therefore, to help one understand the goal of Vedic philosophy, there are other compositions, the Brahmanas. So where are the Brahmanas? Let's have a look. The Brahmanas are here. They're part of the Shruti. So we got the Vedas, Upavedas, the Vedangas, and under the Vedas, there's Samhitas, the Brahmanas. So what are the Brahmanas? Are compositions that accompany different portions of the Ved Samhitas with additional directions and details that the Brahmin priests would use while performing the sacrificial rituals along with their histories. The Brahmins also hold cosmological legends and stories that explain the reason for performing the Vedic rituals, along with the esoteric significance of the mantras and the sacrificial rituals. Then we have the Anarkas. What are the Anarkas? There they are. Right. The Anarkas are sacred writings considered to be secret and dangerous to the uninitiated. The Anaryakas reveal more of the esoteric aspects of the rituals and their purpose than the Brahmanas. They are meant only for the Brahmin priests and Kshatriya warriors who have renounced all materialistic activities and have retired to the solitude of the forests, which is the meaning of Aranyak. They include a strict style of worship to particular forms or aspects of God. These instructions could consist of mantras to use, for particular purposes, how to sit, in which time of the morning to practice, and so on. A lot more detail. Then we got the Upanishads. right? The Upanishads are also part of the Shruti. What are these Upanishads? They are meant for the continued spiritual progress of the individual. The Vedas encourage worship to the demigods for material needs and only hint at the prospect of spiritual liberation. The Upanishads start to explain how worldly attachment needs to be renounced so that we can surrender to God. The word Upanishad literally means to sit down, shad, near upa, and below or at the feet with determination, Upanishad. Upanishad. So it indicates that the student should sit near the feet of one's spiritual teacher and listen with determination to the teachings. The Upanishads are a collection of 108 philosophical dissertations. However, there are over 100 additional lesser Upanishads that are not actually part of the primary group, making a total of well over 200. Out of all the Upanishads, the following 11 are considered to be the topmost. Isha, Kena, Katha, Prashna, Mundaka, Mandukya, Taitiriya, Aitariya, Chandogya, Brihadaranyak, Shvetasvarvara. So many of the quotes that Srila Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita are from mainly Katha Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad, and this one here, Svetasvatara Upanishad. The Upanishads mainly focus on establishing the absolute as non-material, and they describe it as Brahman, the eternal, unmanifested reality, source and ultimate shelter of everything. So now we understand that the Brahman is an aspect of Godhead, the formless aspect. But the Brahman is dependent on the personality of Godhead, just like the sun gives rise to the sunshine. So the supreme personality of Godhead gives rise to the Brahman. But we'll talk about that later. The Brahman is said to be incomprehensible, because it is without material qualities or form. The secret to understanding Brahman, according to the Upanishads, is that they describe the absolute as having no material qualities or material personality, but consists of spiritual qualities. This can be confusing. For example, in the Isha Upanishad, it is stated that the Supreme Lord walks, and he doesn't walk. He's far away, but he's very near as well. He is within everything, and yet he's outside of everything. So the point is that the absolute has spiritual legs to run or walk with, and spiritual senses that are not limited like material senses. So this is the point. He doesn't have legs like our legs. He has spiritual legs. Though the Upanishads gradually refer to the absolute in an impersonal way, they also begin to establish that the supreme reality has form. This is so important to understand. Or in other words, is a person, and that there is a divine abode. For example, the Gopal Tapani Upanishad 223 explains the nature of the Supreme is this one. Sri Krishna has got no birth, no old age. He is always in his adolescence, without any change. He is ever most effulgently shining, so gloriously more than the sun. He is fond of remaining with the divine cows of Golok Vrindavan. He is eternal and fond of being with the Gopas, the cowherd boys, as he feels pleasure tending the cows. So the Upanishads gradually bring about the personality of Godhead, upon which the Brahman actually is dependent. So we've covered certain aspects of Shruti. There's more, which we can do tomorrow. The these aspects here, the Upavedas or Vedangas, just to understand on a high level basis what Vedic knowledge consists of. This is quite important because then we can understand how the Vedas were produced and evolved, so that how the Vedas can help us as well. And we are very fortunate because we have the Bhagavad Gita, which is a summary of the Vedas. And Krishna really gives all of this information in just a few hundred verses. But it's good to have an overview of what Vedic knowledge is all about. Any questions, any comments?
Right, Nabi, I have a question. I'm
Yes,
not very religious.
that's
So tell
okay.
me, we all believe in one supreme God.
Yes,
So where does this Krishna stands in?
right.
Is he a supreme God? He's not a Devta.
Yes, very good question.
Mm.
And that is answered in three places primarily. One, the Bhagavad Gita itself. Second is the Srimad Bhagavad Puran. And the third is the Brahma Samhita. These are the three principal scriptures, very important scriptures, which describe the position of Krishna. And if I just quote you the first verse of the Brahma Samhita, Ishvara Parama Krishna. So Supreme Personality of Godhead is Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. He is always happy. He's always blissful. He's eternal. He's full of knowledge. Satchit Ananda Vigraha. Nadir Adir Govinda. There's no cause greater than him. He's the cause of all causes. Nadir Adir Govinda. Sarva Karana Karanam. So Sarva Karana Karanam, he is the cause of all causes. So according to the revealed scriptures, the most definitive, most important scriptures, it is regarded that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but not just the Supreme Personality. He's regarded to be the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom all the other devatas, all the other incarnations also expand. So this is another quote is in the Srimad Bhagavad Puran, Krishnastu Bhagwan Swayam. Krishna is the original Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the Bhagavad Gita, there's several references where Krishna himself describes his own position. Aham Sarvaso Prabhava, for example. Is that okay, Subhash?
Not really. I didn't understand it.
Okay, tell me what do
If
you...
I have to explain to some present day youngsters
Yes.
who are asking these questions,
Hmm.
I cannot explain it because you say Krishna is also supreme, but what I have heard is Supreme God is present everywhere.
Yes, of course. He's expanded everywhere. But the original Supreme, he expands into Paramatma. So every single one of us has Paramatma within us.
Hmm.
He expands way beyond our existence. He's everywhere. But he's also at the same time himself. This is the nature of the Supreme. He is himself living in Golok, Vrindavan, in the spiritual kingdom. At the same time, he expands himself to be covering every aspect of everything within the universe. That's correct. He's both at the same time. And to explain it, one has to really try to read and understand the scriptures. Then it's once one understands a little bit about what is described in the scriptures, and puts it into practice, some sort of devotional activity, then it's much easier to, one, accept it ourselves, and second, to convince others.
Okay.
Yeah.
It
takes some time. We've been doing this for 40 years. It wasn't that we just somehow accepted Krishna as a supreme. It's through understanding, it's through reading, it's through performance of seva to the devotees, to the Supreme Lord. And gradually over process of period of time, we develop that faith, that unflinching faith, that no matter what, he, the Supreme Lord, is there, and is there looking after us, no matter what. I'll give you an example. This is very personal to me and happened very recently. And it just gives me that much more faith in the Supreme. Although I have faith fully anyway, but it just it reinforces it. I was in Vrindavan. It's a very small and simple example, but to me, it was very significant. I was in Vrindavan, and in Vrindavan, they have this thing called rasmalai. You know, it's very nice, sweet they make, and they offer it to the Lord early in the morning. So I bought this rasmalai and I was tasting it. I was thinking, that's nice, but it's a little dry. And I was remembering the rasmalai in New Delhi that I had. And I was thinking, that rasmalai which I had in Delhi, which they offer again in the morning, early morning, 4 o'clock in the morning, that was very juicy, you know. And I was just thinking, maybe my flight is tomorrow. I could pop into the temple and just buy 1 or 2 of those, you know. I just had that desire, you know, for some reason. Anyway, I thought, ridiculous. Don't be so stupid, you know. So then anyway, the next day or that evening, we set off for the airport. And funny enough, the flight that I was on got cancelled for whatever reason. And they put us on a flight the next day at 2 o'clock. So I was thinking in the middle of I was thinking at about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, what shall I do? I thought, let me just go to the temple. Temple is only a half an hour drive away. So I went to the temple. I stayed there. I enjoyed the darshans, and somebody invited me for prasad, who I hadn't met for a long time. And guess what they gave me? They gave me a whole lot of mahaprasad, delicious prasad. But they gave me 2 boxes of rasmalai. Would you believe? What I was desiring the day before, it was just before me, you know. So the Lord knows our desires. The Lord knows our inclinations. And he will interact with us how we interact with him. If we have some faith in him, he will multiply that faith by the way he deals with us over time. If we have no faith in the Lord, then it's not that he will reject us. No, because he's ultimately our Father. But that reciprocation of love or dealings with him may not manifest so much. Does that make sense, Subhash?
I think it is beyond my
No,
knowledge.
it's not. You are smarter than I am, believe me.
I actually wanted some people to explain to me, which I can explain to youngsters in a very easy way, not
Yeah.
in a very complicated way.
No. It's not complicated. It is very easy. Krishna is the Supreme Lord. That is described in the scriptures, in the Vedic scriptures, primary Vedic scriptures. He is the source of the spiritual world and the material world. He's the source of the devatas.
If you say Krishna is the Supreme Lord, what happened to Vishnu and Brahma?
Yes. In the probably not in the next 1 or 2 sessions, we'll have the family tree, and you will see how the Lord expands in different ways. So just bear with us, if you don't mind. And I promise you, you will see how it becomes manifest. Where does Vishnu fit into the grand scheme of things? You're absolutely right. Very, very good. Very important to understand this. But just bear with us so we systematically get there.
I ask you a personal question.
Sure.
I have seen Rig Vedas. We had Rig Veda, very big book, very, very big book.
Hmm.
So I ask you, have you read the Rig Veda?
No.
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 Such a big book. Who reads it?
Well, you're right. This is, you see, the whole Vedic, there are Brahmins who read it, believe me, and there are Brahmins who know
Have,
the Rig
have
Veda.
you actually seen Rig Veda?
I haven't. I don't have, and I have no desire to either.
No,
The
you
reason
don't
is,
desire, but I have. I have the Rig Veda, but it's such a big book, and I
sure, sure. And that's why Krishna advises us, don't worry about the Vedas. That's why he's given us the Gita. Because the Gita is the summary of all of this. The Vedas are like 2 billion, 3 billion verses. Who in their right mind is going to be able to go through that and still remain sane? but but what Krishna's given us is like 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, of which he spoke 560 something. And
Okay.
that summarizes all of this in a very succinct way.
Okay.
And we'll
Thank
go
you.
through that. Please bear with us, and thank you so much for you and Neelam joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to add something that, you know, we have all these different faiths, and like we call God Krishna. So, you know, the Muslims would call him Allah, you know, and Jehovah. So it's the same God we're all worshipping, but we're just calling him a different names as well. So
Excellent.
again, you know, we'll come to all that as well in more detail.
Good point. Yeah.
Okay.
Prabha, did you have
Prabha Ben, yeah, Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thanks for sharing your experience about this Rasmalai. I was really surprised the way you said it, that really you wanted to go and buy it, but God just gave you in the prasad, and it's just unthinkable that really God is listening you in what is going in your heart.
Yeah. And this is
It was very, the way you said it's good. I mean, and he gave you 2 boxes, which you must have brought it to London.
I know. And then I was thinking, oh, I made Krishna work so hard. But this happens so often. You know, so many times this happens. And he does it to just, you know, make sure, hey, I am
This,
here. I am here.
yeah, but this is your faith.
Yeah.
This is your faith. And we have talked I have talked with you before on the phone, which I'm not going to mention it now.
That's right. Yeah.
The faith is the main thing.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right.
थैंक यू माता जी। माता जी आप कैसे हैं? लॉन्ग टाइम के बाद हम ज्वाइन किया।
I'm good as well, thank you.
Yeah, I have joined after a long time.
No.
Nearly 4 months I miss. Okay.
Hare
Jai
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Kamakshi, yes.
Yeah, I was listening, and I think when you said, or when it was in the conversation, that we desire and Krishna would fulfill our desires, but I think sometimes it works that Krishna will only fulfill it if we deserve it.
Very nice
So
point.
Krishna is going to be balancing out that we can desire to be millionaire, but do we deserve it to be millionaire? So there's just like not catch-22, but we have to earn that by having faith or doing good service or whatever it could be. Horrible.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes, very nice point. Okay.
Could I ask you something?
Sure.
Sorry.
Sure, sure.
You know, you say that the Bhagavad Gita is a summary of the Veda. So in the Veda, then it takes, because all I understood was the Veda is karma kanda. Is it karma kanda?
A lot of it is, but not all of it.
Okay.
Yeah, not all of it. And the Vedas includes the worship of the Supreme as well. But
All
it's
right.
little, like Subhash said, the Rig Vedas is humongous, and how are you going to spend the time to go through that, and how are you going to understand it anyway? So what the Bhagavad Gita does is it summarizes that Rig Veda, all of the Vedas, and it gives the essence of the Vedas, basically, so that it's understandable.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Navi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very good. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining.
Hare Krishna.
Please bear with us, okay? It will take a little time, but we'll get there.
Okay. All right.
Sanatan, Hare Krishna. I haven't seen you for long.
I know, Hare Krishna. Thank you.
So, Sanatan Dharma ki jai. We'll continue tomorrow, huh? Hare Krishna.